Hope your lunch was okay. I'm Erik, and I'm going to talk about how we use ChatOps to scale humans at BigPanda. So I'm going to wait for the last one of you. And in the meanwhile, a funny story about rain. So this was supposed to be my ending slide, which was supposed to be really awesome because it would encourage you to go eat, which you probably would have waited for. But since supposed to be the last talk before lunch, but well, we had to change that. So some of you might have seen me yesterday giving an Ignite about Kung Fu and DevOps. I'm Erik. I'm a team leader and the community guy at BigPanda, where I've been working for the latest 3 years approximately. Early 2014, when I first got to BigPanda, BigPanda was already doing continuous delivery, meaning that anything that got into the master branch was deployable at any given time. The way we would do deploys was by SSHing to a Amazon instance called Ender, which was our deploy server. And there we used to run Ansible playbooks on a Ansible Git repository. We were around 8 deployers by then. We were small. We managed approximately 5 microservices, and we managed a total of 15 servers. So as I said, we were kind of small back then. But we had our problems, right? We were a small startup, and all you want to do as a smart startup is ship code as fast as possible and deploy that a lot. And one of the biggest problems we had was lack of visibility, and this caused synchronization problem. It was extremely common that in the middle of the day, someone would just yell out at the middle of that small room where we all were sitting, who the hell deployed something to something, because we would overwrite each other's changes. And this was not only annoying, this also caused problem because we deployed incompatible versions of microservices to production, of course, override each other's changes to staging servers, etc., etc., etc. We also suffered from deploys not being reliable. This was also due to the fact that, as I said, we were a small startup, we had crappy internet, so our SSH connection to that Amazon instance would get disconnected, or we'd just close our Mac and our sleep mode, and that would be disconnected as well. And this was annoying because we sometimes did not know if a deploy completed successfully or not. Not only that, we couldn't really debug this at a convenient way. Even if we wanted to show each other the errors we were receiving, we would physically have to go, again, the amazing distance of a small room to another person showing that error, and it was really, really annoying. The last problem we had was that Ansible was not common knowledge. People kept doing the same silly mistakes about what parameters to call for our Ansible playbooks, and you had to learn about how they work in general before you could deploy, which is kind of annoying when onboarding new employees as well. And we used to bug our DevOps guy about that every time. So, hello. So he got annoyed by that, and whenever you get annoyed by something, you try to solve that in Bash. So this is Chagai, our amazing DevOps guy, and what he wrote was extremely simple but extremely useful. He wrote a Bash wrapper for Ansible. So instead of this extremely long parameter first command that we used to use just to deploy a app called that API, which you can guess what it does. So instead of that, we would just use deploy sh, which he wrote, and just name the name of the app that we wanted to do, and optionally have a lot of parameters like the environment we want to do, if it's a specific branch, etc., etc. And this small Bash wrapper was awesome because it had a decent help, like all Bash things, and it prevented people from doing silly things. So it solved the problem of people did not have to know about how Ansible and how our deployment works. They could just use that entry point, the deploy sh, and that's it, kind of. We still had a synchronization problem. We still had those shout-outs of who the hell deployed that and ruined my code. And we still had the problem of not reliable deploys, disconnections, etc. So we set out to fix that as well, and there's a lot of cool Unix tools like Bash, and there's also Tmux. Oh, damn. Uh, and there's awesome clickers as well. Yay. So the next step in our deploy evolution was using Tmux to solve those disconnection issues. So what we did, we wrapped that SSH logging to enter that deploy server with Tmux. So anybody connecting to that server would automatically reconnect to his previous session, thus not suffering that much from our crappy internet. And not only that, we use local users for each user, so we could continue to debug our own sessions. We could show those sessions to other people, and we still use that with a sim-linked playbook repository, so we all deployed from the same place. And finally, a small but extremely useful tool called Mosh, or Mobile Shell, which is basically a wraparound SSH that suffers disconnections better, and that's kind of mandatory if you want to work on train Wi-Fi. So this solved the problem of disconnection. It helped us debug because you can search the Tmux buffer or Tmux buffer, and it was really cool. It helped us debug because we could show other people the problems as well, but it did not help the problem that we still overwrote each other's changes and deployed incompatible versions. So we decided to use ChatOps because that was all the hype. This is really cool. We have to use this, right? So we wrote a chatbot using ubot, which is a chatbot framework from GitHub, which really rocks. It's kind of old if you compare to all the new shiny things that are coming out right now. But it does everything, and it does everything extremely good. It can connect everything from IRC, HipChat, Slack, or even Skype. So we wrote a HipChat bot using ubot, and ubot is running CoffeeScript, not so yay, and we called that Beanbot, the chatbot. Beanbot was limited to deploying only to staging servers because we weren't really sure if this would work or not. It's kind of a new thing, ChatOps, at least it was for us. And behind the scene, Beanbot used to actually connect to our Jenkins instance, and that used to run our Ansible playbooks like we did before manually. Beanbot could do a lot of cool things. It could query past results and past deploys, so we could like say what's deployed on that staging server and get a list, or who deployed that component last, and we get a list of that as well. And that failed because it didn't really solve our synchronization problem. Basically, not a lot of people were using HipChat. It really wasn't that hip. And people were not, it didn't gain that visibility that you're supposed to gain from ChatOps. It didn't solve the real pain we had, which was production, deploying to production. And not enough people were involved with actually developing it. We only had 3 contributors, and that mainly was because people really hated CoffeeScript. So this was around mid-2015. We were growing a lot. We were around 15 deployers by now. We had 15 microservices, and we were managing approximately 40 servers by now. And so we said, okay, we're a serious company, right? We're growing, and we're getting way maturer than we were before. So we were not able to solve this with ChatOps. That's probably a fad or something like that, right? So let's solve this with chat. So we created a Slack channel, and needless to say, we jumped on the Slack wagon and ditched HipChat really fast because Slack rules. So we created a Slack channel which we called deployment logs. And as you can see from the samples there on the right, we would manually go into that channel and notify about locking. Locking could be a component, it could be an environment, or a server. And this very quickly escalated to be totally unusable because people forgot to lock, people forgot to unlock. People lock ambiguous things like everything, but because humans are stupid. So we set up to fix that again, and we weren't able to fix it with ChatOps. We tried with Chat, so we wanted to try ChatOps again. This time we gathered requirements on Slack. We argued a lot. We are very good at that in Israel, about what we need our ChatOps bot to do. And then we took a hackathon evening at BigPanda, and we rewrote our chatbot from scratch. We were still using the U-bot framework, which still rocks, and we called the bot called Robin, because he's a kick-ass sidekick robot. And this time we wrote that in JavaScript as opposed to CoffeeScript. That enabled us to use all our other Node.js microservices standards, like a unified way to do unit test and integration test, and a unified way to deploy this afterwards, manage configurations, etc. And it worked. Everybody went on board with this directly. I can't really express how fast this took off. It was literally, we deployed this, we showed this once, and then everybody started using that. And what Robin would do, he would manage our deployment logs. He would actually deploy to production as opposed to only staging servers before. And he prevented a lot of stupid human errors. And the syntax was extremely similar to the bash script that we talked about before. So the reason that Robin really succeeded was that it was very, very easy to manage this, as opposed to the previous bot, Beambot. If you had a problem with Beambot, you would talk to the lead developer, and that lead developer would either ignore you or fix that. So that was part of my problem as well. But this time we managed all the planning and issues, etc., using GitHub Issues, which is very lightweight, as opposed to doing in something like Jira. And about half of the entire R&D were actually contributing code to Robin, and almost all of the R&D were involved in opening issues and discussing the different features of Robin. As I said before, this was written in JavaScript as opposed to CoffeeScript. And that really helped because, love it or hate it, both, everybody knows JavaScript, and it was much, much easier for everybody to contribute code to it. As I said before, Slack was so much popular than HipChat. Everybody was using it. We were there all the time, so it gained visibility directly. We also used a lot of different U-bot scripts, which are basically like small plugins or snippet that you can use, which connect to everything. Anything with an API or internal thing, services, external ones, etc. As of today, we cannot really function properly without Robin. We do everything with it. It's an integrated part of our development cycle. Whenever we think about new features or new flows, we also always think about how to do the ChatOps side of that flow. We're around 30 deployers by now. We have more than 30 microservices, and we manage approximately 160 services on servers on Amazon. And we do approximately 100 daily deploys and logs using Robin. So I kind of explained everything in there right now, so I'm going to show some examples. Let's start with something extremely simple. I can tell Robin, and this could be in a DM, or if I mention him in one of the channels where he resides, please deploy Splinter, which is by chance another bot, and he will deploy that, notify me and anybody in that context, whether it's a channel or a DM, of what he deployed. So here we can see it uses a lot of sensible defaults. So develop is the default branch unless you specify others. Stage is the default environment unless you specify others. So I don't need to do much to get something deployed. And on the other hand, it's extremely simple, and I get as much information as I need back from it. And another thing, when it goes to production, we can see there that Oleg wanted to deploy our front-end app to production. So all he had to do was say deploy frontier to prod, and Robin would actually notify Oleg of the last commit made that is going to be deployed, just in case there was some kind of mashup or he's about to deploy something that it isn't sorry, his. Not only that, we also confirm with Oleg by asking Oleg to reply with ship it with a extremely random integer afterwards. So here we minimize human errors by making sure that the deployer has all the needed information. Not only that, we add a confirmation step if you want to deploy to production, so we don't deploy with typos. And that is a great clicker. So here's another example of minimizing human errors simply by not doing what the stupid human was trying to do. So here Roman is trying to deploy a component called Envy to our performance environment, and Robin would just not do that because that was already locked by another user. Another example is to provide useful feedback and context relevant. So Noah, which by chance is here in the audience, tried to do something, failed utterly, got a pat on the back and saying that it wasn't easy, and a link to the Jenkins job where all this failed, so she has the relevant context to fix that, as opposed to the second message where we can see that everything worked. She gets a pat on the back saying that she was very freaking great, and she doesn't get any Jenkins link because it works. There's no need to debug this, so less content. Another thing is you should have your chatbot to be as queryable as possible, to be as relevant as possible, and to do that, you can, here we can say I can ask for all the logs, and typically as we do a lot of deployments all the time, the list is way more than those 4 lines that you can see right now. So I most likely would want only the details that are relevant to me, so I can also get all my logs. And here we see another small example. So instead of just not replying because I don't have any logs, Robin is a bit more humane and he says that no logs are found. Another thing that you should do is you should ensure namespacing for your ChatOps commands. This helps for a couple of things. First, for helping. Most of the chatbot frameworks have a built-in help that you can use. If you type help without anything, it will spit out all of the commands that bot can do, which usually is a lot. And it's also queryable, so if you pass something to that afterwards, it will filter and show the help relevant only for that. So here we can see that Robin tells me all of the OD is on demand, relevant commands that we have, and what I can do with it. So namespacing helps for humans because we get context and it's easy to search helps. And it also helps to build the ChatOps regexes, which you have to do in order to build a ChatOps. So if we look just on the upper box, that's basically how you do a interaction with a human. You communicate with regex, which is very similar to human life. And basically what I say that if the robot gets a DM or is mentioned, and after that something comes with block and a word that does not start with space and has at least 1 letter, because you all knew that because it's regex, do something with that, right? And what we see in the bottom box is a unit test for that, and that is using a very cool package for Node called Hubot Test Helper, which gives you a wrapper to test bot interactions in a very humane way. So here I can see that I'm asking the Hubot Test Helper to say that the user foo said Hubot lock bar. And afterwards, what I'm expecting to hear back from the bot is that it's already locked at stage by Zom, which is the kind of setup I did the line before. So this really helps because you will always make mistakes in regular expressions because there's nothing regular about regular expressions, sorry. And it helps you to get code coverage and solve those pesky small typos that you have. Another really cool thing we're using Robin for is our operational needs. So probably you're all using Grafana, which is awesome. Here, instead of Itamar here, wanted to get a Grafana graph, so instead of opening that in the browser, he's asking Robin to get everything from the latest 3 hours for our correlation engine. What's extremely good about this, except it's a graph and graphs are always good, that this is served by a S3 bucket, so this is saved later. So although what he wrote is relevant for that hour, like 3 hours before that hour, when we see this the day after, it's still what happened when he asked for that. And that's extremely helpful for operations war rooms. So if Itamar was woken up at 2 a.m., he's have still not got to his computer. He can look up things on his phone and get kind of a grasp of the situation of the system. Not only that, as other people's help wake up and try to help him, they can get on to speed really, really fast because they can see the evolution of this incident in our operations war chat room. So this is extremely helpful. Another thing that is important for your ChatOps bot is you should never spam too much. There's kind of things of chatbots fatigue. If you have a public room with a ChatOps bot that gives too much information, people will stop reading that. We had that case with help commands because the help command output was really long, and people kept doing those in public rooms, and that's all we had in that public rooms, just the capabilities of that bot. So instead of that, Hubert will simply reply in private with all the usage. That's, by the way, something we got merged back into Hubert, so yay. Another thing you should not spam is, of course, sensitive things. So Roman here signed up a new organization to our performance environment, and there's no need for everybody to get his credentials, so those are sent in a DM instead. Almost lastly, we use Robin to help us with all the small day-to-day tasks we use, and this helps us both with visibility so other people can see this as well, and it simply saves us time. The first example is me asking who is on call, and directly I get the result for that. That of course goes to the PagerDuty API and receives that for me. The other is actually we can enable and disable feature targets for organizations to our customers live, and instead of connecting to the database via SSH, we can do that here, and it's extremely helpful because it's visible, so everybody can see that it was done, and it's lightweight and easy to do that. Oh, seriously, just with a good one. Anywho's. So the usage of your bot should always be fun. If you mention Robin in a way that you have a typo or anything that he understands, that she understands that you wanted something from him, but you had a typo or something he does not understand, he will reply with random header response, says. So here's kind of a summary of the things we learned, most of them the hard way. Your bot will be down. You'll do typos. You will do stupid typos that JavaScript will ensure that it will fail in production. Not only that, why hello. Not only that, you'll make things that are incompatible. You thought you did something that will work, like a conversation regex, and it won't work. So say that you deployed your bot and with code that crashed that bot, you need some other way to deploy that bot so it can get back up again. Not only that, you need a kind of a parallel process, so anything you want to deploy, you can deploy without ChatOps, but you should always encourage the ChatOps way to deploy that. You should always reuse your existing deploying syntax and process, because this really helps people to get on board with using ChatOps. The ChatOps bot. You should be able to run the bot both locally on staging environments. UBot actually provides that for us. You get like a local REPL in your shell where you can talk to the bot, and that it's super helpful for iterating and developing new chat interactions. And you should also deploy that on a staging environment, because you will discover things that you didn't locally, like incompatible Slack APIs, etc., etc. You should make contributing to the bot as easy as possible and fun. This means bootstrapping development environment, making it super fast, super easy to unit test the bot, etc., etc. Lastly, you should set up your own company bot skeleton so that people can set up new bots fast. This really helps for creating proof of concepts and creating multiple bots. And here's a list of a couple of more bots that we have in BigPanda. So we have a groceries wish list called Super Panda, where we can ask for more chocolates, coffee, or whatever. We have a bot called Gordon, which is awesome, who helps our sales and support team with cases, etc. We used to have a bot called Bellboy, which used to open our office door, but that's also something important. You should, as with legacy code, be able to throw those bots out the door, pun intended, if they no longer work as they should. We also have a bot called Splinter, which rewards people for fixing lint problems in our code. And that's kind of it. I'm open for questions if you have anything else.
Do you run like several instances of the bot regarding the bot skeletons, or you just provide some templating engine or something to produce functionality and integrate that functionality to the existing bot?
So I'll just recap on the question, fix me if I got this wrong. He asked if the company skeleton bot adds functionality easy to existing bots or create new bots. So typically that would create new bots, so you can test around with things, and you should probably create bots per domain. So you should have a deploy bot, but to open our office door, that would be extremely insane to ask our deploying bot. So no, our bot skeleton creates a new bot. It's yet another Node.js app that we were able to deploy. Yes?
On Bash or other shells, you have autocomplete, so isn't that a limitation or something you're missing?
Actually, depends on your chat vendor, because if you do Slack commands, you can get autocomplete. So it's possible to do with ChatOps as well.
Do you use it?
We haven't used it yet. We have an issue open on GitHub for our bot. We'll get there someday. But yeah, it depends on what you can do. If you provide a decent help, you can get by without auto-completion. But yeah, you can do that depending on your chat vendor. More questions? Oh, there you go. Thank you.
You're welcome. About that, you said that the deployment should work, you make sure they work outside of even without the bot. Does that work, for example, for the blockchain functionality? It looks like which I guess was the main reason, primary reason you went with the bot solution, is to prevent people overriding the deployment. Is that functionality implemented in the bot, or?
So I'll recap the question. He asked if we deploy manually, not via the chatbot, say if we destroy the chatbot, if that uses the same locking mechanism, which was part of the reason to use the chatbots. So no, it doesn't do that, unfortunately. More questions? Feel free. You should ask stupid questions. Yes?
How did you build, or what was the process to give the bot some autonomy in doing different process flows?
Could you explain what you mean with autonomy?
Yeah, when we implemented our deploy process, first we had the deploy script, which was run from the developer workstation onto the different servers, and then we just got the bot to use the same script with a dry run flag, and after we saw several dry runs working as they should, and we fixed some failures, then we give Jenkins or the bot some autonomy to deploy the code first to staging and after several weeks to production, and moving forward to different modules.
Oh. What you asked, I'll try to recap if I understood it correctly. Did we give the bot everything, all the capabilities up in front, or did we test it with a limited functionality? So we tried to test it with limited functionality, but we kind of dropped that very fast, because that was part of the reason that the first bot was killed. Because we didn't deploy to production, so people got used to two separate processes, and the most important one is always production. So you should do something with a dry flag at least once, right? So you don't completely screw up your deployment. But you shouldn't limit yourself too much from it, by it, because it will stop you and it will make the bot not used by anyone. More. So the question was, how do we manage permissions and who has permissions to deploy? Everyone. As of now, we don't have any ACLs or something that does this smartly. Anyone connected to our chat can do that, even our sales guy, God forbid. Yes, more questions.
Do the chats or chatbots have functionality for managing permissions?
So the question was, do chatbots or chatbots framework have built-in permissions features? So there are, in UBot, there's a UBot script that does it for you. There's even a UBot script that connects to LDAP. Yeah, there are a lot of those functionalities. It depends on what you want. They're usually pluggable. Yeah. Yes?
How do you know if the deployment actually succeeded and failed?
That's an
Do you have
excellent
any option to debug it, get output?
So the question was, how do you know that a deployment worked or failed? And do we have any debug possibilities of a finished deploy? So we notify upon every success, and we run Ansible, so we get the exit code. And since we run it via Jenkins, we can debug and see all the output at Jenkins if it failed. So that covers it for us.
But not from you didn't get the output from the bot.
No, we don't. He asked if we get the output from the bot themselves. No, we don't. We provide a link to Jenkins with output because that would just spam too much. More. There are a lot of other frameworks as well, except UBot. Right? There are a lot of new shiny stuff. And there are a lot of hosted services that do ChatOps bots for you as well. More questions? Yes. So he asked what the sales and support bot does. So it gathers notes, say you're sitting with a prospect customer, and gathers things from Salesforce and whatever those dudes do, and help them to be more relevant, have more information, case history, etc. More. One last question. This is going to be the best question, so one last question. And we're done. Thank you all.